Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Roxhill Media Fashion Webinar. We're so excited that 57 of you have joined us to hear what our amazing panel have got to say about this crazy world that we're living in at the moment, all focusing on fashion and fashion PR and how we can help them fill their pages. So I'd like to introduce Priya Elan from The Guardian, from the fashion team at Guardian. There he is. We have Jane McFarland from Sunday Times. There she is, the fashion team there. And Charlie Gowans-Eglinton from the Telegraph. There we are. And then we have Alessia Horwich, who works for Roxhill Media as our editorial director. And so we start by me asking the panel various questions about their world and what's happened in the past couple of weeks, what's coming up in the next month or so, not that many of us know. And then Alessia is going to receive your questions that you'll be asking, hopefully, and put them to our panelists to answer. So we all leave the session knowing a little bit more about how we can do our jobs properly and help with fill their pages. I'm also a PR. My name's Emma Cripwell, and I do the PR for the Pig Hotel. So whilst it's not fashion, I kind of understand the world that we're all in. So to begin with, Priya, I'll ask you first, how have the past 2 weeks been?
They've been, sorry, pardon me, burp, first thing, that's right. They've just been completely insane with working from home and reconfiguring what that means in terms of the production and the writing and the features. A lot of our sections have down-paged or are thinking about down-paging, and so it's the question of what constitutes a news story now, what constitutes a feature now. So in work terms, it's been very much, we're taking it day by day, as I'm sure you guys are, and assessing the mood as it changes. And I think we're being quite cautious about the tone of our coverage.
Mm. Yeah, it is a time for caution with coverage. I can see that through every section. Jane, tell us about the next 2 weeks you have coming up, because I know it's a changing agenda by the hour. What are you thinking you'll be able to run? What sorts of stories in the next couple of weeks?
So I think we feel like, obviously, the paper is covering coronavirus and everything that's going on in in-depth detail. It is a very, very serious, paper taking into account everything that's happening. And so we want style to kind of remain a bit of a kind of breath of fresh air, a bit of light relief, something that can still be quite entertaining, can spark a bit of joy, laughter, conversations that aren't about coronavirus. So we're definitely trying to balance our content to obviously speak to what's happening, but also have lots of kind of evergreen fan features that will kind of be read regardless and resonate, hopefully. So yeah, we've touched on a little bit of fashion. I think shopping is not really a priority for people at the moment, understandably, and we're not comfortable kind of putting together our regular shopping pages as we would. I think, as I'm sure everyone else is, activewear, loungewear, working from home, there's definitely room to kind of use that type of product. But again, it's not something we can repeat week after week. And so fashion shopping has definitely gone to the wayside. And I think it's just much more, as Priya said, focusing on like features, what resonates, what's relevant, and just making sure that we're kind of providing something that feels a little bit different to everything else in the paper.
Yeah. And Charlie, the shoot side of things and product side of things and image side of life, I know all three of you will have an opinion on this, but how are you coping with all of that?
Well, that's a huge adjustment. I think actually for us as writers, you can write anywhere. You can write without really any materials. You just need your laptop or your phone. The shoots are incredibly difficult. But we were talking about this briefly actually before we went on air, and Jane was saying this could be a real period of creativity because people are having to work in completely different ways. And I think probably all of our teams are looking into different ways to shoot without having a huge team in place. I know a lot of the more lifestyle kind of magazines, the longer lead times, are looking at shooting via screens, doing whole Skype issues. I mean, look at the Elle covers that we saw that were all shot via video that were fantastic. So I think it's just a time for us to all be creative and completely rethink the way that we do things.
Yeah. And as the PR community, how can we also be creative? And I know it's sort of a bit of a crazy thing to think, but what are we getting right at the moment and what are we getting wrong? Because it's really important that we, you know, in everyone's hour of need, that we actually help you guys constructively. What do you think about that, Priya? How can we do our jobs better?
I think my instinct is from that side of things, it is almost business as usual, and I find that quite useful. So then you can go through your emails as normal and pick up on what you think is relevant. For me personally, I find it, you know, quite difficult to know what I'll be doing sort of day to day, week on week. So I think keeping the number of emails as it has been is sort of useful, but you know, that's me. I don't know if everyone feels similarly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jane, so keeping the emails coming, but what are we doing that's wrong? And the few emails, I mean, I'm sure people are pitching some great ideas in, but is there something we're consistently doing that's not helpful?
No, I think generally the first couple of weeks, everyone was sending out the waist up dressing, the work from home dressing, the loungewear, the new active wear. And I think we've kind of tackled that. And, you know, I do think people aren't going to be buying more and more and more and more loungewear or activewear or any of those things. So I think that could probably, for me personally, ease up slightly. And then, you know, anything about vacation wear or summer dressing just also doesn't feel, I know it's sunny outside, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be something we'll be covering anytime soon, based on the fact that travel is obviously being kind of halted at the moment. I think what would be useful for me certainly is to look at what assets brands have created in-house, based on the fact that we're not able to shoot anything. Have kind of brands created their own amazing content and shooting talent, shooting ambassadors, creating lookbooks, anything exclusive that hasn't kind of been seen elsewhere that could potentially be used as a cover image, as a, you know, to hold a shoot inside. I think that's really what I'm trying to kind of get from brands now.
Right. Okay. So stuff they may have been sort of had in the pipeline, but let's see it early. Let's have a look and see if we can make it work in the story.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you, Charlie? And do chip in, because this is a really important point. Are you very conscious of people's budgets now for spending on fashion? I mean, I know we might be making a list of our dream things that we can do when everything's back to normal, you know, or the new normal. Are we going to be very conscious about how much we're spending on fashion?
I think so. I mean, I work for the Telegraph, and our reader does have a larger disposable income than, you know, different titles that I've worked on in the past. And it is something we're always aware of, especially in the paper, actually, because I think in a paper, you're always turning from a completely different section. You've not picked up a magazine thinking, oh, great, I'm going to have a moment of escape and it's glossy and, you know, there's a fashion image on the cover. You've just turned in from news. So we're always quite aware of our price points in the paper anyway, because we don't want it to feel incongruous with the mix. But I think what we're trying to be very aware of is just constantly checking privilege. And there are going to be people who want to spend a certain amount on different things. But there are also people who are furloughed and who are struggling and who are losing businesses or worrying about money. I think for us, it's not necessarily about featuring less expensive product. It's just being more aware of what we choose, or increasingly aware, because we've always, in the last couple of years, tried to focus on sustainability, tried not to include fast fashion as much, tried to focus on longevity in the pieces that you're buying. And I think that's so incredibly important now, because, you know, if people are shopping now, and we're seeing that, you know, stores are reporting that their online sales are booming. ASOS had a record weekend, but we're trying to encourage people, if they do want to shop with a bit of thought into it to shop with longevity in mind. You don't know when you're going to be able to wear those pieces, but also maybe to support British and to support small brands that need the support right now.
Yeah,
and that's true. So the sustainable argument that we were all discussing before this started, January, December, November, it doesn't seem relevant right now, but it will still hold. Priya, do you think? I mean, this is something that's very dear to the Guardian reader's heart, but the sustainable story is sort of still going to be relevant out the other side of this.
Yeah, I think when we come out of this whole period, I feel like it'll be even more relevant because of what everyone's gone through, and maybe a change in perception about capitalism and all that stuff. And I feel like the conversations I'm having with everyone are about a period of introspection, and that ties into what we wear and how we consume that stuff. So I think when we get to the other end of this, I think we'll all have had a lot of time to reflect on that. And I think that will be conversations, whether it's that conversation or conversations about co-ed shows, those things will come to pass in a sort of real way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So that then leads me on to the question about advertisers, because brands like Chanel or Versace have been, instrumental in helping all these publications meet their costs. How is that all going to work going forwards, do you think?
I think all those brands will be, changing the way they work and, developing their values in a way that reflects the change that society will have gone through, I think. So I'm presuming their sustainability outreaches will have developed in a certain way by that point.
Right. Jane, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Priya said, they'll definitely be looking at internal processes, and I imagine production will be called into question. Obviously, a lot of brands produce in Italy, which will hamper the delivery of autumn-winter collections into stores in September. So maybe we'll be looking at a totally different retail landscape come next season, and whether it's people more working on like exclusive capsule collections, or maybe the traditional kind of catwalk collections landing in stores in 6 months' time just isn't gonna happen in the same way. I think and I think brands are obviously going to be looking to diversify their activity, whether that's moving more digitally, doing more social campaigns, video, because that's where everyone is engaging now. It's online, and even more so during this period. So I think it will just be interesting to see kind of what brands take from that.
Yeah. Charlie, a quick question before I hand over to Alessia. How do we as PRs, fashion PRs, get our emails noticed? I know there has to be a good idea, but you're getting probably as many, if not more now than ever, because everyone's trying to be heard. What makes an email stand out for you?
I think keep it simple for me, because it's impossible for you to gauge what we're working on when we don't know what we're working on. And actually, I think the emails asking me what I'm planning are redundant at the moment, because the paper, and I predominantly work on the paper, is changing day by day, and we're having to reassess every day, is that still appropriate for tomorrow's paper in the light of whatever happened overnight? So we're not working in that way, but what is really useful to me personally is the same things that I was always interested in, which are, I'd like to know what's selling, what people are searching for on your sites, what you've noticed people want, what there is demand for, but also just what is new about what you have on offer, whether you're doing an initiative. I mean, we've been doing a lot of coverage, I think everyone has, of the brands that are supporting in small to big ways, from making masks to donating profits. So if you have a news story like that, great, but that should be in the headline and just give me the bare bones. But I am still interested in what's new, what's, if you have a launch, if you have a face, if you have news, but we might just be covering things in a different way. Sure. And honestly, I can't tell people in advance, and I know that is so frustrating as a PR, but I don't necessarily know until the day before. So we're, you know, this morning I was up early working on tomorrow's paper.
Right. It's
I'm writing it today, which we do anyway. Yeah. But normally, for example, for next week's Wednesday fashion pages, we would plan much more in advance because it's a bank holiday. So we know there's going to be extra strain on the art and the subs teams on that Tuesday. So we would try and get our stuff in on the Friday. Right. That's completely unnecessary. It would be redundant now because after a 4-day weekend, I can't possibly predict what the right tone is going to be, what people are going to feel like, and what's going to feel tone deaf. So we will be doing those pages live on the Tuesday.
Gosh.
Is that the same for you, Priya? You were nodding then.
Yeah, I agree with everything Charlie said. I think it's exactly that, because you don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, with like Boris, you know, I mean, that could change everything for our coverage, and what's appropriate and what's you know, what if our stuff has space, if that happens, you know, it's that sort of who knows what's going to happen vibe.
And same for you, Jane?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's slightly different because we're producing the magazine, which does go to print 10 days before, and we've had to actually further pull back that deadline, because obviously the kind of number of staff working at the printers, etc., has decreased. Therefore, we're having to go to print even earlier than we were. That is obviously incredibly difficult because, like everyone has said, things are changing overnight. So in 10 days' time, it is impossible to predict what's going to happen. So you know, some things will work and some things won't. I think that's kind of why we're trying, where possible, to make kind of a lot of good evergreen content. Maybe we have a lot of stuff in the magazine that isn't related to coronavirus whatsoever, but is an interesting read and hopefully will still mean something to readers. And I think with that kind of, you know, in order to be more up to date and to continue to have a kind of dialogue with our readers, we're just using social media a lot. So we kind of have really amped up our activity on like Instagram and Insta stories. I've been doing a couple of Insta lives with like various authors and interior designers and different things. So, you know, and we're doing exercise classes, all that type of stuff to kind of keep the community going from Sunday to Sunday, and just, you know, making people understand that we are obviously very aware of what's going on, and we, you know, we're part of that wider conversation, and then what is reflected in print is potentially something a little different.
Yeah, great. Right, we've had lots of questions. Alessia, over to you.
Lots of people sort of asking. I know, Jane, somebody's a PR's email sort of written in and said that you guys were planning a themed issue for World Earth Day. They're asking whether it's off, and have you others been affected by, I guess you don't do themed issues, Charlie and Priya, but are any other themes out the window, or are you planning new themed issues, Jane?
Yeah, that we are temporarily putting that one on hold, simply because we had a kind of cover and huge concept planned, which we've had to postpone because we've not been able to pull it off. So I think I mean, in theory, we postponed it to June. Let's see if things will be in any way normal by then. But yeah, at the moment, I think a themed issue isn't really relevant for us. I think it's too kind of specific and isn't kind of relevant enough to what's happening. But for sure, it's in the pipeline. We will definitely do it at some point this year, looking at potentially tying it in around World Oceans Day, which I think is the 7th or 8th of June. But if not, again, we'll just postpone it until later in the season. And just, you know, it's little things like the V&A had a big exhibition about handbags planned to open in a couple of weeks' time, and we had, you know, a cover around that and a big story, and obviously they postponed their exhibition, so we've had to postpone this, you know. So it's all these kind of global events that are no longer happening. You know, Glastonbury, we obviously had huge features and covers pegged to these kind of nationwide events that are not happening. So there's definitely a lot of holes currently being filled.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Is that the same for you, Charlie, as well? You're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, for us, especially in the paper, the Telegraph reader loves going to the races. She loves going to Glyndebourne and to Wimbledon. The opera. Like, this season is such a thing for our reader, and it's a really fun thing to write about in fashion, and it's vivid and colourful, and the product you use is really amazing, and you have great celebrity outings that then spawn different trends and different conversations around, you know, different women of different ages wearing XYZ. We're not getting any of that. And so, you know, we're struggling in that way because we don't have the same talking points coming up of someone going to a party and saying something on record about what women over 50 shouldn't wear, or I don't know, you know, those kind of things that can actually spawn loads of ideas. And we don't have just those really fun images coming in from events and occasions like that. So it is odd to look at the summer ahead and know that those events won't be happening, but it is just making us a bit more creative with what we do. And actually we did follow a calendar, I think, not a rigid one, but certainly when we're slightly planning with the paper, we think, oh, right, that's Wimbledon or Ascot or different events going on. So we'll want something around that. So it does mean suddenly we've got this clean slate, and that can be really exciting, hopefully. You just have to be optimistic.
Is there anything PRs can do to help you fill that schedule? I mean, are you looking for really innovative ideas at the moment? Do you need PRs to kind of really push outside that box and come with things, or are you guys covering it and you just need their support in terms of, I don't know, press releases and the normal kind of stuff? Priya?
Yeah, as I said before, I think carrying on as normal with the sort of communication with PRs at the same level, I personally find useful.
So you don't need them for big ideas, you just need the normal stuff.
I mean, big ideas are great too. I mean, you know, as it was before, I personally find it quite helpful. And, you know, it's that thing also working from home. It's sort of nice to have certain structures in place that are like they were before, you know. Yeah.
What do you guys feel about press days, Jane? Are they virtual ones going to be worth it, or is it just something to scrap?
I don't know. I mean, I did actually attend a virtual press day yesterday, which I actually really enjoyed, and it was basically just done all on an Instagram account, and it was kind of a private account that then, yeah, they just like peppered images from next season from their brands. I think honestly, it really depends on individual budgets. For me, you want all the PR agencies to survive this with all their staff intact. And if that means saving on a press day, whether that's virtual or real, I would personally skip. I think if you can get a lookbook in front of an editor, that's the equivalent of having a press day. I'm really, having so many more phone calls with PRs than I've ever done in the office, because I do have a bit more free time, essentially, because I'm not in meetings all the time anymore. And I have found just having like a quick catch up on the phone is the same as me being at a press day. And it's just, you retain the information, make notes, it's saved, they've sent you the lookbooks, everything's on file. I just think, it's an innovative, it's innovation, and it's creative, and it's modern, and if brands can afford to do it, and they've got the workforce, and they've got the kind of ability to pull it off, then they might as well, if it's something that their brands are asking for, and it's going to be important to safeguard their relationships with their clients. But this is very, very personal, but for me, I'm not sure it's a necessity.
Do you guys agree, Charlie?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think PRs generally, when you're walking around a press day, and I don't get to that many of them, honestly.
Yeah, same.
But when I do, when you're walking around, PRs know what the talking point will be for you. And they'll whisk you off to a rail, and they'll say, oh, this one's really interesting because the founder's done X, Y, Z, or is from this background, or they're working with these local factories. You know what the talking points are about those brands. So you can probably tell me that in an email.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that now more than ever, it's really important to understand when your coverage goes out and what type of coverage you're doing? So I'm getting the sense that, the two papers are obviously looking for something quite different from what Jane is looking for. Is it more irritating at the moment when people are pitching the wrong type of things to you? Priya?
No, it's not irritating at all. I think as a journalist, you sort of filter stuff for what you're interested in and what you think's appropriate for different sections or the section you're working on. So, you know, you're quite used to doing that as a journalist. So yeah, it's not irritating.
No. Good. Well, that's good.
Yeah, I think it's more about, if you're wanting a bigger feature, it is about coming with some sort of exclusive angle. You know, even if we are a magazine versus the two papers, we can't go big on something that the Guardian have just done a massive story on the Wednesday, or, you know, or whatever. So I think it's just about knowing your audience a little bit, and kind of, yeah, if there's a kind of bigger story that you are pitching with more of an exclusive kind of first look.
With exclusive, somebody has just asked, with all the events and launches that are being pushed, when's a good time to start pitching exclusives for a good spot for the second half of the year? Charlie?
Ooh, I mean,
it's a bit hard.
I think pitch them as you have them, because I think what we're trying to do, even though everything is up in the air, is put things in just with the understanding that things may shift, and none of us can predict where we're going to be in 2 months, 3 months time. 6 months time is impossible to predict, but that doesn't mean we can't plan and we can't hope. And, you know, Jane says planning to reshoot in June, and they may have to move that, but we're not all just going to sit here twiddling our thumbs. We're going to plan, and we're going to get as much in the schedule as we can. And I know our magazine teams have been having to completely rework everything, and putting in a lot of time on that, but they still want great pitches, they still want cover stories, they still want amazing, you know, exclusives. So we can book those things in. It's just, I think we all just have to be flexible and understand that things will move.
Agree.
Yeah, same for you guys. I was wondering if there's been any upsides to this lockdown. Is there any bits of work that you guys have been particularly pleased with, that you've done, well, in the last, I guess, 3 weeks? Jane?
In terms of actual things that we've published, or just the processes? I mean, I'm really enjoying working from home. And honestly, this has been like a total game changer for me. And I have felt really productive. And like, you definitely get a little bit more headspace. I think kind of being pulled out, like taken out of the internal meetings has been, refreshing for me. And just being able to kind of, focus a little bit more. And like I said, connecting with people on the phone has just been, you know, my emails really have dropped off, and that's been quite nice to kind of not have such an overwhelming inbox to get through, but instead just like have a call with my fashion team every morning, have a call with my editor like 3 times a week, call with the commercial team. I don't know, it feels like people are working together much more collaboratively. And I think, just as I said before we went live, you know, across the kind of industry, I really feel like we're all in this together now, all the journalists, all the stylists, all the photographers, all the models. Like, it's kind of bringing the industry together, in my opinion, in that I'm loving what people are doing with their content. I'm really kind of, you know, huge amounts of respect to people who are kind of pushing the boat out, evolving, doing something different. And I think we're all facing the same challenges, and we're, you know, it's this kind of repetitive cycle that we're always all on. And I don't know, the only other people that understand it are our peers. And so you kind of have that nice kind of spirit of collaboration, which I'm actually really enjoying. And I hope that it does create some sort of lasting impact in terms of how people consume, how people interact, the kind of amount of travel that we all do, the budgets that we do spend on shoots and all these things. Like, they're, you know, everything needs to be re-looked at once we return back to some sort of form of normality.
Same for you, Priya. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, when Jane was talking, it made me think about how I'm having more meetings with our entire team every morning, and that's so nice. And I think it makes us feel more connected. It's more sort of a hive mind when we talk about ideas, and yeah, I think that's really positive.
Charlie, we've got you back again? Can you hear us?
Charlie, can you hear us?
I can't hear you.
She can lip read there.
Let's go for another question from the side, shall we? what was the one? How are you guys, and this is probably one for Charlie and she can't hear me, but maybe Priya, you can help. Are you interested in how fashion retailers are coping? Sort of, I assume whether their business is up, down, if they're out of the game completely, if they have stock available, that kind of stories.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some of that coverage has been taken by our business desk.
Yeah, same.
On the paper. So I guess it depends on what the specific story is. A lot of the fast fashion stories have been, you know, the business desk stuff. But I mean, I'm definitely interested in those. So I guess if the question is whether they should send over that information, I think definitely.
Yeah, and I think on that, obviously a lot of brands are diversifying how they produce and how they sell. And, you know, a lot of brands are doing good things right now, whether, as Charlie said, that's donating a percentage of their profits or, you know, making donations to the NHS. So I think any sort of brand story, uplifting or not, is really interesting because that's a true reflection of how this is impacting the industry. So again, it's something that our business desk is covering, but I think it's always worth just running those past the fashion team as well.
We've got one. Jane, you talked about your social media and how you've been expanding that hugely. Priya, are you guys doing anything else with your social? Are you planning to do? Should people be pitching in for both, for you and sorry, that's to you and Jane. Should people be pitching in for those new social media slots? Priya, do you want to answer first? Sorry.
I mean, we are continuing business as normal in terms of our Instagram. And yeah, I suppose that's a question more for Jane.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think I definitely, if you kind of have any spokespeople or any brand ambassadors or someone who has a very specific role or job in that they are a yoga teacher or they are an amazing cook or an interior designer, they specialize in how to make small flats look great and become more, you know, work efficient, etc. Then we're really looking for kind of media personalities that we can partner with, whether that's filming at home YouTube videos, doing an IGTV, Instagram live, simply sharing their tips that we can put on our Insta stories. Anything like that, anything that, you know, someone wants to produce exclusively for style is super useful. I think it's just, you know, widening that conversation. And again, it's maybe not, doesn't necessarily have to be someone that we would have covered in the magazine, but I think with social, we can be a bit broader in terms of the type of talent that we're working with.
That's good. Priya, Jane has talked about her love of talking to people on the phone. Well, how do you feel about new love? Sorry. How do you feel about digital or virtual catch-ups with PRs? Are you interested in talking to them at the moment?
I mean, to be completely honest, the majority of stuff I do is sort of 90% over email, and it has always been sort of, and because of, I suppose for me personally, because of working from home and dealing with home stuff, it's much easier for me to do it via email, so I can sort of do it in my own time and when things aren't so hectic. So yeah, that's preferable for me personally.
Yeah. Are you a lover of the standout subject line, or is there another way to get your attention to open these many emails?
A standout subject line can work. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we've got lots of people sort of asking, what's the best way to contact you guys? You know, if somebody doesn't know you, Jane, how can they get on a phone call to you?
I think it's always a good way. It's just kind of reaching out to wider members of the team. I think a lot of people will come to me with everything. And actually, you know, I have a great fashion editor and 2 great fashion assistants who are, you know, incredibly efficient and communicative, and who I will be speaking to on an hourly basis. And so I do find that if you've got a fashion feature, it's a really good idea to pitch it to Henrik first, and then he will likely run it through me. When me and him have our weekly catch-ups. And in terms of shopping or new brands, you know, Flossie, our fashion editor, and Phoebe, our fashion assistant, you know, like I said, these guys aren't shooting at the moment. They've got no shoots to do. So they are much more receptive on email than they potentially have been in the past, and they've got more time. So I think if you're not getting an answer from me, I apologize, but it is a bit mad. And that, yeah, it's all about kind of involving the wider team and making it, you know, that's the easiest way to ensure that we don't miss anything.
Priya, is that the same for you? There are other people that you can hit up if you can't get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Our team's quite broad in terms of shoots. There's Helen and Joe and Mel, who are our stylists, and Hannah, my editor. So yeah, I mean, those are the main people.
Yeah. We've had a question about samples. I know we talked about this before we went live. The samples are off the table. Is that true for both of you? And is there anything that's supplementing that space? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, we're obviously, as no one's in the office, not receiving any samples or shooting at all. I think, as usual with our regular shopping pages, we're just working with still life, cut out images, and high res, please. That's all I ask. But yeah, that's how we're getting through it at the moment. And then when it comes to shoots, I'm going to have to take a kind of bespoke approach, I suppose, depending on if we get talent, how that's going to be shot, and then if there's any brands potentially that they have kind of personal relationships with, that we can arrange for, samples to be set directly from designer to talent or brand to talent, etc. And again, it's very case by case. And I think just in general, it's a blanket no on samples for us.
Priya, do you?
Yeah, same for us. Yeah.
How are you guys dealing with shoots then? Same sort of approach.
So from my page, which runs occasionally in the weekend, we did 2 shoots back to back, sort of a couple of weeks before our last week in the office. So, and because the pages have been slightly down paged anyway, they're going to be spaced out. So that will maybe get us to sometime sort of in May, and then I think, like anything, you're just going to revisit.
Yeah, I'm regretting that we didn't backlog a lot more shoots than we did, but it was tricky because I feel like we came out of Fashion Month where we were away traveling for 4 weeks, and then this literally happened. So it's like where we would have normally actually shot quite a lot in 4 weeks, we just don't have the same back catalogue of content ready to go. So it's definitely challenging.
Yeah, definitely. We're getting down to the sort of everyday nitty gritty now. We're being asked about follow-ups. Do you guys like a follow-up, or is it irritating? How many is too many, or should they just sort of assume that if you don't reply now, it's just not going to happen? Priya?
So I think on the whole, it's probably it will have been read and then we will have moved on. But last week someone emailed me a follow-up and I hadn't actually remembered that I'd seen the email. So they, I think they're fine.
I definitely think that like one follow-up is always quite a good idea, because you said, you might have glanced on it and actually just not logged it, and then the follow-up prompts you to be like, oh yeah, wait, this is actually what I want to do. I think probably more than one follow-up is excessive, possibly. But it's really hard to know, because it just depends on like the day and what's happening and whatever deadline you're on. But I think
okay, well, we're coming to the end of the session. I've got to do a quick plug for our Rockstars newsletters, which go out daily. Please do sign up at our website. But I wanted to ask you guys one last question just to finish off. What are you most looking forward to after this is all over? Priya?
Gosh,
and Charlie's back.
Charlie's back. Charlie.
Sorry, I've missed loads. I just completely lost you.
No, I know. Well, it happens. It happens.
Did you see me looking really puzzled?
To begin with, you were like, we knew you couldn't hear us.
I was just like, no, it's gone. Sorry. Continue.
Well, I was asking my final question. I wonder if I'll try and catch you up, Charlie, afterwards on some of the ones that you missed that maybe you can weigh in on. But I was asking Priya what he's most looking forward to after this is all over.
I think just sort of in a general way, how people's perceptions of what fashion should be, what will that be like, and how it will affect our pages and our content, I think that'll be really interesting. Also, I'd just quite like to have a Pret lunch again.
Yeah. See what I thought we're missing.
Just a coffee.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah, I agree. On a very basic level, I just feel like I'm spending my whole day washing up. I'm like washing up breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm like, okay, I need a break from like housework. It's killing me. So yeah, I'm looking for. I think it's just the freedom. It feels very much like we're in this sort of, weird dystopia where we don't have the freedom to like make very simple choices and decisions and go about our day to day how we are just so used to doing. So I think it's just it's just that sort of having that mental freedom, I suppose, and just kind of escaping, and being freed of this kind of anxiety that I think we're all crippled with at the moment. There's a lot of concern and worry and fear and unknown, and I think I will never take before life for granted again, because actually you don't realize how wonderful and privileged we are until something like this happens. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Charlie, what about you?
People.
Yay, people.
I live alone, so people is my main thing. But I do have like daily video calls with my team, and so it's fine. I still do tea breaks with some of the girls from the office when we want to moan about people, but just via video. No, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing what creativity comes out of this. I think times of crisis always create this boom of creativity. It's when there's, you see the birth of new eras in art and in music, and it's always really hard times that create such amazing things. So I think I'm excited to see the creativity that's going to come out of this. That being said, I'm not feeling that creative myself, because the anxiety is extreme, so it's hard to be your normal level of creative, but hopefully some other people are out there feeling very creative, and I'm excited to see it.
Brilliant, thanks. Emma, do you want to?
I'm just going to quickly, because we lost you for a bit, Charlie, we're just going to ask you one question from Zoe Taylor. How can brands pitch for the Fashion Unzipped podcast? And then we'll go for it.
We're actually on recording hiatus at the moment, so at the moment we're not taking pitches, which might change in the future. It probably won't change in the near future, because in terms of recording it, I think it would be difficult for us to do that remotely. I mean, I say that I record a side project podcast remotely, and we're doing a Skype situation, but I'm not sure if we could get up to the Telegraph standard of audio quality. I know it is a boom time for podcasts, so it's definitely something we're looking into doing, but it's not our priority right at this second.
Okay, brilliant. Now over to Alessia's plug. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. It's been brilliant. And
Thanks,
the
guys.
Roxhill plug's coming.
Oh, is it coming? Well, it's just that do sign up to our Rockstars newsletter. We have 4 great journos every week telling you what's going on inside their publications, what they're hearing, insider tips. It's really worth it. You just have to go to roxhillmedia.com and sign up.
Thank you, guys. Great
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
We're lost in the middle.
Bye.